story opens with a skeleton lying on the ground, trying desperately to escape. But before it can move, a giant red beast brings down its massive palm, smashing the skeleton into the dirt. In its final moments, a thought lingers: it used to be a pro gamer. Now it was nothing more than bones. Even after all this time, it couldn't understand why was this happening. It all began in 2025, when the revolutionary open beta of The Great Wasteland launched. Hyper-realistic, open-world game that blurred the lines between fantasy and reality. Players around the world went absolutely wild. For the first time, the dream of wielding swords and casting magic became a digital reality. With thousands of character classes and billions of missions, the game became a paradise for hardcore netizens. The demand was so overwhelming that the beta studio producing it was flooded with orders. Testers had to work overtime just to keep up. Among those exhausted beta testers was the protagonist. Just 3 weeks before the game's full release, after grinding non-stop for 42 hours to complete a massive mission chain, he collapsed from a heart attack. While lying in that state, voices echoed around him, players noticing his character. Someone shouted about how he looked like he was dying and urged others to check his inventory for retractable gear. If he died, they'd lose access to his loot. Then everything went black. Yet strangely, sounds still reached him, screaming. A girl's voice, panicked and frantic, begged him to move. She was desperate, saying that if he didn't act, she would die. He slowly registered the presence of a blonde-haired girl in torn clothes. Confused, he wondered how he was still alive. What was happening then? She shouted again, relieved that he was finally moving. But her relief turned to panic once more when he froze again. Was this really the afterlife? His attention snapped back when a terrifying presence loomed behind them. A hulking, red-skinned monster was staring directly at them. It was a zombified wolf elite. The girl yelled at him to stop the creature. And then he realized something. This wasn't heaven. This was the starting village of the Great Wasteland, the desert of death. He had been reincarnated into the game world. His mind reeled at the realization. He recognized the monster. It was the same zombified wolf found at the beginning of the game. But now it was real. The danger was real. She screamed again as the beast charged toward them. He instinctively recalled the monster's data. It was level 2 carnivorous with a weak point in its neck. He had fought dozens of them during beta testing. Determined, he launched an attack at its vulnerable spot, but his strike failed. His arm shattered on impact. The monster didn't hesitate and counterattacked immediately. He was overwhelmed. As he slammed into the ground, he realized the horrifying truth. He wasn't just reincarnated into the game. He had become a beginner-level skeleton soldier, a trash mob usually summoned by rookie necromancers. Weak, fragile, disposable, desperate to survive, he reached for a sword nearby. But before he could grab it, the beast struck again. It felt like he was about to die again, right after being reincarnated. Everything froze, and suddenly the story rewound. In his former life, he had risen to fame as a professional gamer. He had won 2 major championships and built a record-breaking career in esports. At the time, he believed he was the main character of the world. But then a car accident changed everything. The injuries left his hands trembling constantly, ruining his reaction speed. His performance plummeted. His career came crashing down. He couldn't even afford the medical bills. Worse, he had breached his contract, and the penalty fees were suffocating. To survive, he gave up his pride and became a beta tester. Even then, he refused to accept defeat until he died. He remembered the voices around his lifeless body. They told each other not to bother calling a doctor. He was already dead. One person cursed that he still had items left in his inventory. Others debated whether to notify his family, only to decide he didn't deserve condolence money. After all, he was the one who owed money to the company. They even laughed that dying was the best thing that could happen. His death would pay off his debt. They said he probably died without regrets. After all, he was a world champion once, but deep down he couldn't accept it. No regrets. That was a lie. He had countless regrets. He screamed inside, refusing to die like this. If the world would just give him one more chance, he would take control of his fate. In that moment of desperation, something responded. The system detected his overwhelming desire to live. The godly evolutionary system was activated. Its purpose was to help him evolve endlessly until he reached the pinnacle of this world. A special gift pack was used. His health was fully restored. He stood back up, this time ready to fight. With the knowledge from his beta testing days, he defeated the zombified wolf. The girl who had summoned him looked on, completely stunned by his strength. The system displayed the results. He had killed a level 3 zombified wolf. He gained 10 EXP and 10 evolution points. Still in disbelief, he glanced down at his body. Maybe it wasn't as weak as he'd assumed. The girl, equally shocked, wondered how the skeleton soldier she summoned was this powerful. Then came a system notification, shows his name, Jiang Cheng, and along with that all other personal info. The path ahead was long, but he wasn't starting from nothing. Now, armed with experience, rage, and the desire to reclaim control over his life, the former pro gamer, now a skeleton, prepared to climb his way to the top of this new world. The Great Wasteland wasn't just another game. It was a revolutionary open-world RPG praised for its extreme realism, but that realism came with complexity. Its game mechanics were filled with incredible potential, and among its rarest features there was a small chance that a player's summon could undergo a mutation. These mutations weren't guaranteed. In fact, they were so rare that even calling them 1 in a million might have been an understatement. But when it did happen, a mutated summon could become the cornerstone of a player's progress, unlocking power that allowed them to defeat enemies far above their level. One such case had just occurred. The girl who had summoned the protagonist finally understood what had happened. She had pulled the jackpot. Her summon had mutated. She stared at the loot that had dropped from the zombified wolf teeth, a common item but valuable for early combinations. Among the materials scattered before her, she spotted copper, gear, and crafting resources. She couldn't hide her excitement. With what she collected, she could afford an entire month's rent. Just as she was celebrating, a wolf's severed head landed in front of her, making her jump. She flinched, thinking another monster was coming for her, only to realize her summon had already slain another without her noticing. She stood frozen. At that moment, she didn't know whether she was the master or the summon anymore. Despite being a level 1 necromancer, she had somehow ended up with a summon far stronger than anything she should have access to. It was absurd. Meanwhile, the protagonist, the former pro gamer reincarnated as a skeleton soldier, was starting to get used to his new body. The zombified wolves, once threatening, were now nothing more than cannon fodder. He could take them down easily. He had come to accept that he was now inside the Great Wasteland, reincarnated into the game world shortly after it opened to the public. The girl who summoned him must be a player. Though he lacked vocal cords and couldn't speak, something else caught him off guard. The system apparently he could evolve, continuously. The conditions were simple: keep killing monsters or players to accumulate evolution points. System notice. Evolution points are earned by defeating monsters or players. These points can be spent to trigger evolution. Strength points can be obtained by defeating elite bosses. These are required to unlock advanced features. Current strength points are insufficient to activate any strength-based upgrades. This was new even for him, a beta tester who had explored every corner of the game. The concept of an evolving summon with its own system interface hadn't been part of any public documentation. He was intrigued. What would happen if a low-tier skeleton could evolve? How far could he go? Suddenly, a system prompt appeared before him and asked, "Do you wish to evolve into skeleton swordsman?" He had no other options, so he accepted. Fire surrounded his body as the evolution process began. For 3 seconds, the system shielded him while his stats skyrocketed, and all stats increased by 80%. New weapon, bone steel sword. Passive skill acquired, swift draw. It increases attack speed by 20%. He couldn't believe how much this first evolution had changed him. Even without advanced techniques, his raw battle power had already surpassed that of most early game players. The bone steel sword suited him perfectly, and swift draw was exactly what he needed to compensate for the skeleton's lack of brute force. But he knew this kind of evolution came with risks. If players discovered that a summon possessed self-awareness, the consequences would be severe. In the world of the Great Wasteland, sentient summons were considered heretical. He didn't want to cause trouble, but trouble would find him sooner or later. He had to grow stronger fast. Unlike top-ranked players and powerful guilds, he was solo. If he wanted to survive and thrive, he needed enough strength to face off against 100 enemies by himself. The plan was simple: continue collecting evolution points as fast as possible. Zombified wolves were no longer a viable target. They no longer gave him points. It was time to switch maps. But before that, there was something he had to figure out: how much of a connection he shared with his summoner now that he had reincarnated, and more importantly, whether or not he could bring her with him. At the moment, she was still celebrating. She shouted joyfully about the wolf skins, bones, and meat they'd collected. Everything could be exchanged for money, and the Great Wasteland had a notoriously high exchange rate between items and in-game currency. The game had just launched, and this was her golden opportunity to make real money. Then she noticed something strange. Her summon looked different. The sword was new. Its body had changed. Had it just leveled up? She was amazed. A summon that could kill monsters and change appearance. It was definitely a mutation. Overjoyed, she hugged the skeleton and declared he would carry her to the apex of her life. She ran to collect more materials while chatting about how they'd be rich by morning. Her plan was to wait for the next wave of wolves and farm them all night. But the skeleton knew they couldn't stay. He had to try and communicate. She misinterpreted his behavior immediately, assuming he wanted to move to another area to grind. She didn't like that idea. The current spot was filled with easy monsters and he could kill them quickly. She liked the comfort. She didn't want to leave. When he tried to pick her up and carry her out, she panicked. She yelled for him to put her down, begging him to let her continue collecting. But he ignored her cries. He had already decided. As someone reborn in this world, he had no lingering attachments to the real one. What he needed now was to use every piece of his game knowledge to get ahead. First kills, hidden bosses, rare gear, he was going to claim all of them. Even if it meant dragging his summoner out of the comfort zone she clung to, the newbie zone wouldn't cut it anymore. They had to move on, their next destination. A nearby zone rumored to contain a hidden dungeon and possibly a secret boss. It was dangerous, but the rewards would be worth it. Meanwhile, the system revealed her player stats, player ID, just a dumb cutie. Yet she is level 3 necromancer, real name Zhang Ming. With stats like that, she hasn't anything special. But with a mutated summon unlike any other at her side, she might just have a chance at greatness, if they survive. The scene shifts to ferocious Bear Mountain, where total chaos has erupted. Screams echo through the dense forest as an entire squad is wiped out. The few players who remain alive abandon everything: comrades, loot, pride, choosing survival over loyalty. Their formation crumbles as panic takes hold. Amid the destruction, a giant bear emerges from the trees, its claws soaked in blood, its growl shaking the air. One of the fleeing survivors, a bald man, tries to run, but his thoughts are split between fear and greed. Even as death closes in, he can't stop thinking about his gold and possessions. Suddenly, he sees movement behind him. He turns, eyes wide with hope. His teammates must have come back to save him, but what he sees instead leaves him pale with horror. A skeleton is walking through the smoke and fire, carrying a girl in its arms. It's not a ghost. It's Jiang Cheng, the protagonist, reborn as a skeleton soldier. The girl in his arms flails wildly, shouting in confusion, unsure why he's carrying her. But there's no time for arguments. The bald man dies in front of them before he can scream. A massive bear strike crushes him instantly. His body hits the ground, a broken ragdoll. Jiang Cheng watches calmly. The player bled out from a debuff. One hit from the bear and it was over. The beast turns its attention to them and roars. The system flashes its stats. Level 7, ferocious clawed bear. The girl panics, insisting they need to leave. Even level 5 players couldn't handle this monster. She doesn't want to lose the materials she's been collecting since they arrived. But Jiang Cheng has other ideas. To him, this is an opportunity. The players who had been farming here were all killed by the bear, clearing the area. He had expected to fight his way through a few survivors, but fate had cleared his path. Even better, those players unknowingly helped him gather the bear mobs into one place. They did half the work for him. Not only could he wipe out the mobs, but the conditions for triggering the hidden boss had also been fulfilled. Without hesitation, he throws the girl aside. She screams in protest, calling him disobedient, reminding him she's his master. But he doesn't listen. Dozens of bears now surround the area, drawn in by the scent of blood and movement. Perfect. They were all in one place. The girl can only watch, trembling. She whispers desperately, pleading with him to stop, but he stands motionless. She begs again, terrified that his actions have drawn the attention of the ferocious clawed bear, one of the deadliest monsters in this area. She repeats herself, hoping he'll listen, but Jiang Cheng is already strategizing. He will take aggro from all of them. That way the girl won't be targeted. Using his beta knowledge and mastery of the game's mechanics, he begins maneuvering. The bear slams its claw into the ground, but misses. Another attacks from behind, its fangs aiming for a bite. His current health is low. He knows he can't take more than 2 hits, so he moves fast, flawlessly dodging every blow. To the girl's amazement, the bears can't even land a scratch. He darts between them like a ghost, baiting their attacks, manipulating their pathing. Then she realizes he's actually using their attacks against each other. The ferocious clawed bears, confused and enraged, begin hitting one another in their attempts to strike him. It's like watching a child mock wild animals. Unlike players, Jiang Cheng's skeletal frame gives him a massive mobility advantage. His movement speed, 2 regular player movement speed. When these massive bears may deal huge damage and have monstrous health pools, but their movement is sluggish. He has the upper hand and he knows their weakness, their ankles and hips. He activates Swift Draw. Attack speed increased by 20%. Targeting their joints, he tears through their tendons, crippling one bear after another. They fall unable to stand. Now with their mobility gone, he begins striking at their vital points. Each hit lands with devastating precision, dealing double critical damage. But this is where the real danger begins. There's a reason these monsters are known as newbie killers. Once damaged, they can trigger a special skill, Lightning Roar. A massive electric shock that paralyzes the player instantly, leaving them defenseless. That's when the bears rush in for the kill. That's how most players die here. The girl panics, assuming Jiang Cheng can't survive the skill. She runs in, desperate to help her summon, not knowing the full extent of his power. A foolish move, but a noble one. Still, she misunderstands. As an undead, Jiang Cheng has no blood or nervous system. There's no way he can be paralyzed by electricity. After activating Lightning Roar, the bears have a 3-second window of vulnerability where they can't use the skill again. And Jiang Cheng doesn't waste that time. He uses those seconds to finish them off, targeting vital points and landing critical hits to end each one. The girl stands frozen, hands over her mouth, completely stunned. She had no idea her summon was this powerful. No, this fast. Watching him move, she feels a sense of deja vu. It was like watching a legendary figure, the secretive elite tester of the Great Wastelands beta. Jiang Cheng. His movements, reactions, and mastery, everything matched. She wondered if this was an Easter egg planted by the developers in tribute to him. Then it hit her. She had summoned him. Her luck was unbelievable. This was no ordinary skeleton. She realized she had to take advantage of this miracle. All around her was loot, gold, monster drops, rare crafting materials. She knew she had to maximize this chance. Her entire future could depend on it, but then, something felt wrong. She looked around nervously. Something, or someone, was watching her. System notification evolution points, 421,000. Jiang Cheng had gained a massive amount of points from this battle. Another evolution was in reach. Suddenly, another prompt appeared, evolution route unlocked. He blinked in confusion, evolution route. Due to your exceptional performance, the hidden evolution route has been unlocked. Cost 2,000 evolution points, 2x more than standard evolution. He never expected there to be a hidden path, but now that it was open, he knew he had to take it. High risk, high reward. Besides, to trigger the hidden boss, he needed to clear the entire zone of monsters. That meant no hesitation. He grinned internally. He would take the hidden path. And when he did, everyone would see just what a trash tier skeleton could become.